speed. Touchdown.
Welcome into the latest episode of Mac and Mose. Andy McNamara joined by the editor of GoDucks.com, Rob Mosley. We are here to preview Oregon's game against USC. It is game number 11 on the season. Like the Arizona State game a few weeks back, both of these teams have identical records. They are 7-3 overall, 5-2 in the Pac-12 conference. They play in different divisions of the Pac-12 conference. So USC is at a point with their 5-2 record where they control their own destiny. Oregon needs help. They obviously have to win out and then have Cal beat Stanford later on Saturday to have any sort of shot at making the Pac-12 championship game. Before the season started, this was the game people were looking at. This could be a matchup of 10-0 teams or 9-1, top 10 matchup. It is a top 25 matchup because of the way that these two programs have played their way back into competitive football at this point of the year. So there's still, I think there's still some intrigue. Anytime Oregon matches up with SC, at least from a local standpoint and an Oregon fan standpoint, this is a big game.
It's pretty crazy how the seasons have mirrored each other. 3-3 starts, 4-game winning streaks coming into this one. Obviously, the drama at USC with the Steve Sarkisian situation, Ducks have nothing to match that. But early on, Vernon Adams' finger injury, was a huge part of Oregon's 3-3 start, and so they had to overcome some drama, some internal strife a little bit, and to get where they're at. Or a lot of internal strife in USC's case, but they've gotten back to the point where they're at, and whoever comes out of this game on a 5-game winning streak, feeling really good about things, it will really have done. Both have done a really remarkable job of kind of gathering themselves and getting things together and getting back on the right path. But somebody's going to be feeling really good about themselves on Saturday evening.
One thing with USC, they had the sanctions, they had a lower number of scholarships for several years. They should be kind of back to full strength from that standpoint. But even during those sort of lean years from a recruiting standpoint, just based on the number of scholarships they had to offer, they always have talent.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think if you're an Oregon fan that scares you the most is, in my opinion anyway, on any given Saturday, USC can beat any team in the country.
Right.
And they have that kind of talent. They have that kind of depth. And what I think people tend to forget a little bit with the 85 scholarship rule, in football you have 22 positions. Now you need at least 2 competent players at all 22 positions. So that takes you to 44. Then you throw in some specialists. So, you should be able to every team should be able to compete under the current sort of set of rules that you're given. But even with those smaller numbers, USC has always been an attractive college football destination for some of the best players in the country. They still, even over their stretch with the sanctions, were producing NFL talent every single year. So it's a huge challenge for this Oregon team.
Yeah, I mean that recruiting base. I mean you can't match that, particularly if you're Oregon and the state of Oregon, just how things are geographically and the way the population is spread out. Not nearly throughout the state the level of talent that USC has, probably within a 10 or 15 block radius of its campus. And the draw for guys, I mean, that program is a great tradition, but guys want to play at home, too, in front of their friends and family. So you got a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster who, there was a lot of mutual interest between him and Oregon, and ultimately he ends up at USC. And, the chance to play at home is a big draw. And Juju also fits kind of your point about it. They have guys on any given snap that can go the distance.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it, Marquise Lee just a couple years ago. It was a guy like that too, where kind of it didn't matter what state USC was in as a program or in a game. They have guys where if they're touching the ball, they could go to the house anytime. And Oregon has that as well. And I think people are expecting a lot of points to be scored in this game.
And Oregon, like you say, has gone after a lot of players that have ended up at USC because they like the same kind of athletes. But for every DeAnthony Thomas that does come to Oregon, It seems like there's about 25 guys that decide to go to USC. Let's get to this game a little bit with the current squads. Oregon riding a 4-game win streak as USC is. Vernon Adams is really starting to become more comfortable. It's visible. He's understanding a lot more of the playbook. The Ducks are able to do more things. They've had games where they've passed it a ton and had success. They've had games where they've run the ball a ton and had success. So right now, I think the offense, there's still areas where they can improve, but this is the Stanford game now in the rearview mirror, but when you look at that game, the number of just explosion plays.
Yeah.
I mean, this is back to 2 or 3 years ago Oregon offense where it just seemed like every fourth or fifth play somebody was taking the ball 50 yards plus.
Yeah, and tempo, I think, illustrates just how much more comfortable Vernon Adams is now than he was, because the Ducks can play fast because they don't have to worry about, is he getting the play call? There were certain opponents where you got to make sure, Arizona State, you can't play fast against those guys because you really got to make sure you're getting your protection set based on what they're showing pre-snap. But, when you're ripping off drives in a minute and a half, 2 minutes, you're playing fast. Now, you're also putting together some big, long explosion plays that limit, the number of plays it just takes to get down the field, so that helps tempo too. But when you talk about the things that they're able to do more now, I just look at tempo, and tempo can still be a difference maker for this offense.
Derek Carrington, a big part of this 4-game winning streak since he came back into the lineup, along with Adams' health. They've had a great connection. Royce Freeman has carried the load all year long, but we've seen more of the other backs like Kenai Benoit, Taj Griffin, Tony Brooks-James the last couple of weeks, and it's allowed the Ducks to kind of keep the freshest body in there possible on offense. Now for the USC offense, they've got a senior quarterback as well, Cody Kessler. He's been at USC the entire time, has a full grasp of everything they do. Their running game has really sort of taken some steps forward since Steve Sarkisian left. I mean, he was a quarterback himself, more traditional sort of USC offense. They become more balanced over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and that's going to be a challenge for the Oregon defense.
Yeah, particularly the last couple of weeks. I mean, that really, really balanced. Nobody throws as much as Washington State. Nobody runs as much as Oregon, but there's a lot of middle ground there. And USC, they're not 50-50, but they're darn close to it. And so we talk all the time how when an offense can be multiple, that presents problems. That makes you tough. And these guys are going to be as balanced, kind of as multiple. They're not Cal and Washington State slinging it all over the place. They're not Stanford, which is going to try to pound the ball at you in the run game. They can do both. I mean, they have backs averaging 6, 7, 8 yards per carry. And then when you've got a senior quarterback throwing to guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, you can get it done through the air too. So a real challenge, a different kind of challenge for the Oregon defense, which has made strides the last couple weeks, but is really going to be able to prove itself once again this weekend.
Statistically on the season, the Oregon defense probably the weakest point. You might on the outside look at the points scored and some of the passing numbers that have been put up against Oregon, but really the weakness has been the run defense, and opponents averaging over 5 yards per attempt on the ground against the Ducks. In this particular game, it's going to be key to try to limit first and second down to short yardage. And then I think Oregon should have an advantage from a defensive line standpoint against this USC offensive line to get some pressure on the quarterback.
One of the best developments of the Stanford game is seeing Rodney Hardrick and Joe Walker and Reggie Daniels, kind of the strong safety, be the leading tacklers. Those are the guys against a team that runs the ball that you want. You want the D linemen, filling gaps and funneling backs to that second level where those guys make plays. So, will USC try to do some things that gets Hardrick and Walker off the line of scrimmage, even into pass coverage, where some teams have given the Ducks trouble that way? Or will they really be able to do, like last week, stay in the box and just help, focus on stopping the run, make plays, be disciplined in their gaps, get off blocks, make tackles, which they did last week better than they have all season. If they can get that done, then they'll be able to do that. To your point about stopping first and second down, making them have to throw.
The Oregon secondary has started to gel over the last few weeks. They've got, now that we're 11 games in, or this will be game 11 into the season, some of those younger guys I think have gotten the reps that have made them better as the season goes along. So they'll have a big challenge in this one. Juju Smith-Schuster, who you mentioned, USC always seems to have 2 or 3 receivers that, people that don't watch all of their games maybe have not heard of because they're not popping up on the national radar, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, who is this
another
guy?
One? Yeah.
So they're going to have their hands full. Tyree Robinson left the game against Stanford. It's been reported that he was limited this week and was seen in a boot and that sort of thing. There's some other players on the defense, though, that are working their way back from an injury standpoint or a health standpoint. I tend to think that at this point of the season, that unit is actually in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I mean, you'd love to have Juwan Williams back out there. You know, Chris Cisse, you'd love to have back out there. We'll see kind of going forward over the next few weeks what their availability is like. But you've got to like that Charles Nelson, continues to progress. He's getting more and more comfortable over there. I think Arion Springs, and he gave up a couple of touchdowns in that Stanford game that he was kicking himself about. But over the last month or so, has been a pretty dependable guy. They've played, one guy to the field, one guy to the boundary. Usually it's Springs to the field, Robinson to the boundary. Maybe, if Tyree is limited or can't go, maybe do you switch it up? Do you have Springs just shadow Juju around? I don't know. That's something to watch for, how they deal with Juju, and they can put Adoree Jackson out there at any time too. Mm-hmm. Usually when he's on the field, he's getting the ball. So that's going to be something that really, the Ducks have to be on alert for, is just keeping track of personnel and when is Adoree in there.
Yeah, like Charles Nelson for USC, Adoree Jackson is a defensive back. He'll show up on offense. He'll show up in the return game on special teams. He has Dat-like speed, I think, is probably a fair way to describe him. So it's it really shapes up for a great late season conference matchup between these two teams. And like you said, I mean, both of these teams have gone through some struggles and really kind of turned their year around. And I don't think either is in a situation where this game is going to, be a soul crusher necessarily. But the winning team is going to have momentum. In USC's case, they like I mentioned earlier, control their own destiny to the Pac-12 title. If the Ducks can win this game, then they sit back and root really hard for Cal and try to take care of Oregon State the next week. So there's still a lot on the line. Not a whole lot of football left to be played, but there's so much that can still happen between now and 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, if you get a win Saturday afternoon and you're still in the race for a Pac-12 title, you're still in the race for a Rose Bowl, you're still in the in contention to win 10 games. Those are all of those things make for a great year of Oregon football, no matter what. And considering where the Ducks were, 5-6 weeks ago, that just makes it just that much more special what this team still has out there to try to accomplish. But just a huge hurdle Saturday, because I think to your point earlier, I mean, SC on any given day can beat anybody. I sense a feeling of confidence and even relief among Oregon fans, like, okay, hey, the Ducks finally are who we thought they were, and kind of in line, playing as well in line with teams of recent years. But this is certainly not a week to sit back and relax.
No.
I mean, this is a week to be on alert, because SC's really, really good.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We'll talk about it and wrap things up from this game early next week. It's a short week for us, a short week for everybody, as the Ducks will have to turn around and play on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, against Oregon State to end the regular season. So fast and furious we go. In the meantime, if you have any specific questions, things you'd maybe like us to discuss here on Mac and Mo's, please get to us on Twitter. I am at McNamara UO. He is at Duck Football. Until next time, we'll see you.
Gets the corner into the end zone for the touchdown. It's through 50. He's got the speed. Touchdown.